Welcome to Project Ecology, where we talk about our glorious purpose. And this week we are discussing Loki, Season 1. Now that all 6 episodes have arrived, we are excited to discuss not only like a non-spoilery discussion and review, but, just the in and out of everything that happened in the show. So I'm really excited about it. Are you really excited, Anthony?
Yes, there's a lot that's going on in the show, and I believe that it sets up a lot for, future MCU titles and like maybe even TV shows.
Yeah, I think, and we'll discuss that later, but I think the ramifications are already being seen in some of the other titles that have been released. If I have a lisp, it's because I have Invisaligns in my teeth, and I apologize, but gotta correct that. So
lispy.
So Anthony, what have you been up to this past week since we recorded our last episode?
I've actually been catching up on Loki. I didn't get to watch all of it as it was coming out because for a few of the episodes I was sick with COVID, so I wanted to wait until I was feeling better before I started watching that. Because as I stated, this is one of those shows that you need to pay attention.
Yeah, definitely.
And I was not paying attention to anything while I was being sick. So now that I'm done with that, I've actually started watching Mythic Quest.
Nice. Dude, that show is so funny.
Yes, that show is really funny. I'm still in season 1, but there was an episode in the middle of season 1 that was a tragic episode.
Yeah. What is it?
The one with the
something Quiet Death.
Dark Quiet Death.
Dark Quiet Death. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
That is such a bizarre episode.
Because it's it's nothing like the rest of the episodes. It kind of just comes out of nowhere. None of the characters from the show are in it.
Mm-hmm. And it takes place 10, 15 years before the show.
Right. It takes place in the 90s and early to mid 2000s.
Yeah. So 20 years before, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So I thought it was a pretty good episode, and I feel like they took that story from something. I feel like that was a real thing.
I mean, it feels very real. So I don't want to give too many spoilers away for the actual episode, but because it is in my opinion, it's probably the highlight of the show because it just comes out of nowhere. You're watching a funny show, and then imagine the next episode of that show that you watch is just something completely different. None of the original cast is in the episode. None of the tone is the same. But you start learning that this is basically world building for the entire show. And
right
later on in the series, I don't know if you've caught any of that yet, but they do discuss some of the characters in that episode as just background to the world that they live in or they occupy in Mythic Quest. It's really cool. And Mythic Quest, if you don't know, is a video game in this fictional world that is like an MMO, and it's basically the development team and the video game company working on their next expansion for the MMO, and it's just the inner machinations of that and how crazy the video game industry is, and yeah, it's really fun.
You know what's funny is that some of the cut scenes for Mythic Quest, it's they take different games and kind of mash it up.
I've noticed they have Elder Scrolls Online in there. They have
for
Assassin's
Honor.
Creed.
There's
For Honor.
Yeah. So I noticed that. Yeah, no, the show is funny. The show is created by Charlie Day and Rob McKinney or something. I don't know how to say his last name.
It's either McKinney or McKinney or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. And so you could, and they're from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and you can definitely see the touch of that in this show. It is its own thing. It's not, just like it, but you can see the influence, and even Rob is one of the main characters in the show. And his character is very similar, or it's got a lot of similarities to his character in It's Always Sunny. So it's a pretty funny show.
He's basically a self-obsessed jerk.
Right, exactly. I mean, just like his character.
Yeah.
And It's Always Sunny. And the episode that I'm on is like episode 6 or 7, where you know, and I'm not trying to like give too much information, but the game gets like hacked, and then they find out who it is. Yeah. And that was really funny. That was hilarious, actually. Yeah, no, it's a funny show. When I finish this show, I want to check out Ted Lasso. I heard that one's pretty good too.
I've been watching that a lot lately. It's probably the funniest. You know what? It's the most wholesome show on TV right now. 100%, and it's hilarious. And it's actually not very wholesome. It's just the main character is wholesome in a very, you know, crass world, basically. And yeah, Ted Lasso is fantastic. I've been watching the second season's coming out now. So
yeah, it seems like Apple Plus or Apple TV Plus has some pretty good shows. I'm glad that I'm finally hopping onto Mythic Quest, because it's something that I've been wanting to watch for a while. You know, like, that's my world. You know, I'm a big gamer.
Yeah.
And so
they have an episode like Dark Quiet Death in the second season, but it takes place in the 70s.
Okay. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then the next episodes immediately after follow what happens in that episode, but in modern day. It's really cool. But I won't give too many spoilers.
No. That'll be awesome. But yeah, no, it is pretty funny because they do make fun of common issues in the video game, or like they bring some things to light in you know, the video game development, and then they make fun of certain things. So it is pretty funny because and like being somebody that's like so like into it, I listen to a lot of like video game podcasts and a lot of a podcasts that talk about the behind the scenes of building video games. Some of these jokes that come up, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's hilarious because it's so true. Yeah. Yesterday I watched Jungle Cruise.
Yo, me too. Well, I watched it Friday, but yeah.
Oh, did you see it?
Well, I did.
What did you think about it?
Dude, it was The Mummy. It was The Mummy 2.0.
You know what? Yeah, that's actually a good way of seeing it. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was like really fun. I don't think I've ever seen a movie recently or ever where Emily Blunt has smiled so much. She's usually always playing these like super serious roles.
Yeah. That's a good point, actually.
Like
she does have
like
that
A Quiet
kind
Place.
of persona. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a nice like version of Emily Blunt.
That we've never seen before.
That I feel like I've never seen before. And then The Rock, I mean, it's The Rock. He plays all these different types of characters. He plays characters like that, or characters like, you know, from the Fast and the Furious franchise, you know?
Yeah.
So
what
he's
I
really like in a lot of
him in this movie is for those of you who don't go to Disney or Disneyland or Disney World very often and haven't been on the Jungle Cruise in a long time, you probably don't realize it, but the jokes that the skippers tell or like the narration during your voyage is full of just like really terrible puns. Like, and it's like purposely cringy. And so when it comes to like The Rock and everything, there's a whole section he's using the actual puns from like the actual cruise that they shuffle through, because it's always a little bit different. But the one that they always do is the backside of water. And
yes, dude,
this makes no sense. It's not even funny.
I died laughing because I remember that from the ride.
Yes.
That's what made it funny.
Right.
But the thing is that what made it funny was that, you know, these puns, it's easy to laugh at the puns because they're so cringy, but that's the purpose of them, to be so cringy that you can only laugh at. You're not laughing at the actual joke. You're laughing at how cringy it is.
Yes, you're laughing at the insane fact that you're on a boat looking at animatronic animals, and you have a live human telling you another one. It's like, if you look over here, that rock, please don't take it for granted. It's actually limestone. Something stupid like that.
Dude, I mean, he oh my gosh. He did, and he was doing these puns throughout the movie.
Yes. Yeah, he was.
And let me tell you, was it on a side note, like, I loved it, like, in that beginning scene, because it was like the ride. Remember with the hippo?
Yeah.
And like he was hitting all the things. I was like, oh my gosh, dude, this is the ride.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the ride. Dude, I absolutely... Okay, now we're back on. Like, I really did like it because of that connection to the rides. It really... And then it went and kind of took it and made it its own thing too. Yeah. So it was really cool. Like, I think that it's absolutely insane that Disney takes rides and they make like these full-on movies, and it's like, okay, I see it. Like Pirates of the Caribbean and
absolutely.
Curse of the Black Pearl. I was like, oh my gosh, I absolutely love this movie. And then they took it from a ride, man. Like, it is insane that they can do this, and like it works.
Yeah, and this worked really well too.
Yeah, exactly. And they take aspects of the ride and they implement it into these films. Yeah. So I liked it. It wasn't like the best movie I've ever seen. No,
but,
of course not.
It was a fun adventure. Maybe it was like on par with the level of enjoyment I would receive from watching The Mummy 2.
I feel like it was like a good summer movie.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like,
it was,
like I said, it was The Mummy, and like you said,
right,
Pirates of the Caribbean, kind of mixed together, because it has more of the Pirates of the Caribbean flavor, because it is a Disney movie. It is based off of a ride, and
the ride is kind of the same.
Yeah,
the ride is like kind of the same.
So I'm interested to see how the actual Jungle Cruise ride changes based on the success or not success of this movie, because they did change a little bit of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride to adapt Jack Sparrow into the mix and stuff.
I mean, for the most part, I think I think on Rotten Tomatoes it got like a 61%, and then the audience rated it really high. So I mean, it's
enjoyable. It's a fun time.
I could see them probably changing it. So,
maybe
not
a little
major
bit of refurbishment.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, this is a good opportunity, and I think that a lot of people have said that this is a ride that is in need of an update, and this movie can help provide that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, no, I definitely enjoyed it. So besides watching Jungle Cruise, what else have you been up to, Dakota?
Been catching up on, my weekly shows. Bad Batch has been consistently amazing throughout the course of this season.
That's why you need to finish Clone Wars, dude.
I'm working on that too. Almost done with season 5. But I will say Bad Batch has by far the best first season of any of the animated Star Wars shows, because there hasn't been a bad episode yet. Like, every episode advances the plot, advances the world building of the world, and it's showing you how the clone troopers have eventually evolved into the stormtroopers. And the last episode actually introduces that concept to the clones of the Bad Batch. Wait, these aren't clones; these are just regular humans in stormtrooper attire. So it's really interesting. They finally introduced the TK troopers in the last episode.
Yeah, man. Your boy's been doing this for a while. He's taken all of everything that he's learned, and I feel like it's all culminated into this TV show.
You mean Filoni?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Filoni. He knows what he's doing for sure. In terms of other Star Wars stuff that I've been working on, I have the second wave of High Republic books. Here is Race to Crash Point Tower. It's a junior novel. It's a middle grade novel by Daniel Jose Older. It kind of follows the events of the main book in the trilogy, but like from a different perspective.
Right.
So you get characters from like the comics and stuff that are now introduced into like the general story of what's happening in the universe.
Nice.
Then I have this is the actual like second wave like sequel to Light of the Jedi. This is The Rising Storm by Cavan Scott. It's a great read, honestly. It's basically, and I hate to say it like this, but this is what it is. It's basically like, what if a terrorist attack happened in Epcot? And no, but seriously.
The Starlight Beacon?
It's not the Starlight Beacon. It's the Republic Fair. It's basically
okay.
The Republic is throwing a fair for all the new worlds that are showing up or that are joining the Republic from the Outer Rim.
Okay.
And they make like special pavilions or worlds for each of the attending like worlds, basically. So it feels like Epcot, basically, the way that they describe it, on like floating platforms and stuff. And then the Nile come and wreak havoc. It's actually a crazy book. And then Out of the Shadows, it's the one that came out this past week by Justina Ireland. Really, really fun story. So
I actually liked when you displayed the books that they like. It started off small and got like bigger.
Yeah,
like the actual like size of the books.
It's kind of. let me see if I can pull it up again.
Dude, so, like literally, like the one's small, one's medium, one's large.
Yes, and that also is represented by the length of the the page count as well as the length of the audio books. I will say a negative to this wave of books. While The Rising Storm has a normal audio drama feel, like to a Star Wars production, because in the Star Wars audiobooks they have a lot of music, a lot of sound effects,
right?
But when it comes to the other two, they're just normal narrations, which is super weird for me because I've never experienced I've never experienced a Star Wars book without a little bit of the music or the sound effects, and it's just a normal narration, and it's kind of like almost deafening because like it's jarring for me because I'm so used to I've listened to like 45, 50 of these Star Wars books at this point, and that's the first time that's ever happened. So that's pretty much what I've been up to, keeping up with Ted Lasso and a little behind on Rick and Morty, but
nice,
life.
Nice, yeah, man. Well, I mean, it's kind of like there's so much to do and see, so you got to kind of like pick and choose something.
Yeah, you gotta
eventually
pick your battles.
Exactly. So
but yeah, let's jump into our discussion of the day, Loki. What
Loki.
are your?
I thought we were talking about The Hobbit today. No, I'm just kidding.
Originally, actually, we were going to jump right into the Hobbit trilogy right after Lord of the Rings, but I think
it would have been too much.
It would have been too much. Yeah. So we'll do that at another time. But yeah, Loki is present. It's a hot topic, and
yes, for sure.
We both liked it. I mean, I think it's safe to say that you liked it, Anthony, right?
Yeah, no, I actually like really enjoyed it. As much as I like WandaVision and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I feel like Loki was probably my favorite Marvel TV show.
Yeah, at least the Marvel Studios output that they've released.
Right.
What's interesting is that both WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier had really good runs up until their very last episode, which seems to, in both cases, have like disappointed quite a few people. But with Loki, they kind of, at least in my opinion, they stuck the landing really, really well.
They really did. And
every episode upped the ante, and then at the end, you understand what this whole show has been building towards. And, without getting into spoilers just yet, it's big, and it has huge ramifications for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right. And the thing that I like a lot about this show, and even with like that opening title card and the music, it's got this like very like X-File feel to it.
Yeah, the music was great. I
it really
the name
was.
of the composer, but I have listened to quite a few of the actual soundtrack, outside of just the show, and during the show, because I watched the episodes quite a few times while making my recent Loki video. But
you and your timelines.
Natalie Holt, she's the composer for the Loki soundtracks, and what's crazy is that she's only ever done one other thing for Hugo Blick's The Honorable Woman, starring Maggie Gyllenhaal. So Loki is pretty much her second ever thing, and she knocked it out of the park in terms of...
Yeah, she did really good.
The scene that blows me away, and this isn't giving too much away, in the very first episode, when Loki is looking out at the TVA, like over the railing, and he sees like the entire city that the TVA comprises. The slow, sad violin that plays in that scene is just like really beautiful. And it kind of like the show builds up out of that, and it's really cool.
But yeah, so what would you say, since we're in our non-spoiler part of the episode, which we're not going to drag on for too long, but how would you describe this show in a way that doesn't reveal too much to those who might have not seen it?
Yeah, so...
In a way that might get them interested.
Loki is... It's not only a continuation of the journey that Loki experiences in Avengers Endgame when he took the Tesseract, but it's like a time-traveling, multi-era sprawling show that takes Loki on this crazy adventure between dimensions, between space and time, that he eventually gets caught up in this. It's basically a huge galactic story, that affects everything and everyone. But nobody else realizes it except for this character, Loki, who is like seeing it firsthand.
Right. Yeah, it's a really good show. And for those of you that are listening to this episode, if you haven't seen it yet, for sure, don't listen into our spoiler. Once we hit to spoiler territory. For me, I would say it's better to actually see it than listen. But if you would rather listen than watch, then, that's on you guys. But it's a really good show. It's really, really cool. It's different, which is what I like. It's different, and...
It feels like it was meant for me, actually. Like, I don't know. I think that's a little bit tough to say, but I love the MCU timeline. And this show's all about the MCU timeline. So I was... The first episode, I was like... Oh man, this is meant for me. But obviously it's not. But it's really fun.
And I mean, I like it because it's very sci-fi,
Yes, it's probably the most sci-fi. Dude, this is the best season of Doctor Who that we've had in like 10 years, bro.
Yeah, it was good, man.
Since I think like Matt Smith's first season, this is probably the best season of Doctor Who that we've ever had. But let's jump into our spoiler discussion, because I think most of our audience has probably already seen the show, and we're just dragging out this conversation.
For sure, yeah. No, I just wanted to get in a nice non-spoiler part, and let's hop into spoilers.
So the first episode literally begins in that scene in Avengers in 2012 when the 2023 Avengers travel back in time to 2012 New York, and they try to steal the Tesseract from the Avengers back then, who are then sending the Tesseract and Loki over to Odin in Asgard for safekeeping. They disrupt, or the Hulk disrupts their plan, the 2012 Hulk. And Loki gets his hands on the Tesseract, which, he then teleports himself out of there, and he sends himself to the Gobi Desert, which is where the TVA shows up. And the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, basically are having none of it. They immediately call out that he has made crimes against the Sacred Timeline. The Sacred Timeline, we learn, is what the TVA at least calls the MCU timeline, like the correct chronology of time. and it just goes on from there. And he's incarcerated by the TVA, and they bring him in. What are your first thoughts on the TVA?
Man, it was interesting because there's just a lot of random stuff that was going on. Like at first, upon that first viewing, I'm like, what is going on? I loved when he was like in that elevator thing, and like the floor would like drop out from under him. And like that guy had like that giant book of like everything he's ever done.
Oh yeah.
Or no, everything he's ever said, I think, right?
Yes, and he's like, you can't be serious, and then he had to like also sign off on that, and then he just like there was one more that he had to sign off on it, and then he just like shut his mouth and signed.
Yeah, that was crazy. I loved it when he got into that like giant area and they like told him to take a ticket, because it reminds me of like when you go to like a deli and like that other guy that was in there, he's like, I'm not taking a ticket, and then they like what was it, they purged him, right?
Yeah, they pruned him.
They pruned him, and like Loki's just like, Look! I have my ticket.
I like how he was like,
ticket.
he was like frustratingly like looking like through his pockets, like where did I just put it?
Oh my gosh, dude, that was
one of the best parts for me in that first episode was the. It was almost like Jurassic Park. You know how they have what was his name, Mr. DNA or whatever. Like give that exposition dump where it kind of like slowly explained, or quickly explained rather, how they went from amber. Like a mosquito encased in amber, all the way to real life dinosaurs.
Are you talking about Miss Minutes?
Yes, Miss Minutes. Yeah, they had her in this one where they had her explain, like, we went from a multiversal war back in the day to the timekeepers, uniting this sacred timeline into like the proper chronology, and it starts talking about the variants that we're going to experience, and it's like a big case of Chekhov's gun. Basically, if you're going to show a weapon or like a gun in the background, you're going to have to use it eventually,
right,
during your script or during the course of your show. It's basically foreshadowing something that's coming. So the fact that they talked about the multiversal war and the timekeepers and the variants, we knew that was going to happen in this show ultimately, because it was set up that way.
Yeah, it was a cool little way of explaining what the TVA was, because at that point we were all like, okay, who are these people? Why did they take Loki? What the heck is this like random place that he's at? It was it was cool,
and it worked so well in Jurassic Park the first time. Like the idea of just this little cartoon explaining everything you need to know to get you up to speed.
Right.
So instead of spending an entire episode of Mobius or Owen Wilson's character explaining how the TVA works to Loki, you have this short little clip of Miss Minutes, and you create this cute little character that becomes kind of the mascot of the TVA at the same time.
Yeah, and you became obsessed with her.
Dude, I have a Miss Minutes
pin.
Yeah, hold on, let me pull out. I'll show you guys my.
You have another Loki pen too, right?
Yeah, I got a couple. So here's Miss Minutes here. Her arms move.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah. When they're off of the pinboard, it actually sounds like it's saying tick tock when I move the arms. It's pretty cool.
Oh,
I have
nice.
one that says timeline on it, which I appreciate because I love my timeline.
Obsessed.
I do have another Loki pin. TVA.
There you go. Dakota, just say what you really are. You don't love timelines. You're obsessed with them.
I thought you were going to say you don't love timelines. You love pins. Yeah, I'm obsessed with timelines.
Yeah, man. I did like that little character when she popped up. I thought it was funny. But yeah, no, it did give me that Jurassic Park vibe. Something that I noticed throughout the show is the technology that they used was very Fallout.
Okay.
It was like
1950
sci-fi.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Where it's like it's like a retro look at the future,
made
real through modern technology. Yeah, it's really cool actually, and they almost had like they called their phones or whatever TemPads, which had the ability to slow down time, to open time portals, to go back to the TVA, to communicate with Miss Minute itself.
Right.
And what I really liked about the TemPads, going back to the fact that I love timelines, is that all the time periods that they visited, if you looked at the TemPad in the bottom left corner, it actually gave you the exact date of when it happened on the timeline. So it was really well mapped out, and I don't think it was digitally added afterwards. I think like the characters they actually had a program in whatever cell phone or tablet they were using to film the TemPads with, because it looked like legitimate footage. It didn't look like it was digitally added in post or whatever. So they had it all mapped out in advance.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Kind of like like those old TV shows that would take like a piece of technology and then like kind of add something in on it, and you could tell that it was added. But this technology looks like they're actually using it.
Yes, which I really liked, and I think that really made a big difference in the overall quality of like how the people interacted basically in the show. So let's move forward a little bit. So Loki realizes shortly in his stay of the TVA that he can't use his magic. Judge Renslayer is, questioning him, asking if he pleads guilty. And we learn a lot about like what's actually happening. And early on, we learn that the Avengers were supposed to do all of these things. And that actually caused a little bit of controversy online. Like, so are you saying that the Avengers never had any agency over their lives and stuff? And their actions? And ultimately, it's discovered that no, they really didn't. He Who Remains at the End basically confirmed that he had it all mapped out. Now, how that happened, we need a little bit more clarification on. Like, did he actually script everything in advance, or did he allow them to do something to achieve a certain goal? And I have my theories about why He Who Remains did what he did, but we'll talk about that at the end of this recording.
Right. Because at this point, we don't know who that is. Yeah. We just know that there's the timekeepers. So Mobius, which is Owen Wilson, kind of like pulls him aside, and because he like pulls him from the courtroom, right? Instead
of being pruned, Mobius takes him in for like personal questioning, to see like what makes him tick. And it's a really interesting conversation because it kind of breaks down all of Loki's biggest insecurities as a person, and,
right.
And Mobius really digs into him because he knows Loki probably far better than Loki knows himself, because he's been dealing with these Loki variants for such a long time. Even before this, we see that he's chasing someone we later learn to be a Loki. So he ends up teaming up with this Loki variant to catch the Loki variant that will eventually become Sylvie.
Right. And something that I really liked was that moment where Mobius wasn't in the room. Was it when he tried to escape? I think it was when he like escaped.
Yeah. So when there's one point where Loki falls onto the ground because he like throws the chair off, and Mobius like reverses time, so he like falls flat on his butt. But Mobius comes over, and if you like slow it down enough, you'll see that Loki in that scene reaches into Owen Wilson's pocket to retrieve the TemPad, and then the scene cuts, which is why he has the ability to escape the time theater, as they call it, and like walk around the TVA for a little bit.
Yeah, before or after, when does he see his timeline? After he walks around a bit,
he sees the timeline up until Thor: The Dark World, where he sees his mother, Frigga, die.
Right.
By his own machinations, which just kills him.
Mobius shows him that
he does love his mother. He does love his entire family in a weird, twisted Loki type of way, because one of the things that his character is defined by is belonging, and he's trying to find his own purpose, his own belonging, his own people. He, in Thor: The Dark World, he kind of, or no, even before that, in Thor, he learns that he's a frost giant of Jotunheim, and that kind of breaks him as a character to begin with, and that's kind of what sets him on the villain path.
Right, and you see the way that he reacts to the scene when he sees that, and he's obviously, like, this stuff hasn't happened to him yet. The Loki that we're watching is the 2012 Loki. Yeah. The evil guy that set this whole entire alien race onto New York.
He just invaded. This is a guy who just earlier
invaded
that day.
New York.
Yeah, earlier that day, literally invaded that.
This is the Loki that pretty much everybody hated.
Yes. Yeah.
This is the Loki that we got in this show, and the heartbreak that displays in that moment. It kind of shows okay, he does have a heart. You see it there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mobius shows him that to kind of dig at him. But yeah, no, I do like when he does escape the time theater. And he goes into that one place where, remember they gave, what was his name that they gave the Tesseract to?
Was it Cody or something like that? I don't know. I forget the guy's name. But he also played a character in The Mandalorian.
Did he really?
Yeah, in episode 4, Sanctuary, where he's on that planet and he's visited by some villagers. One of those villagers.
Oh, he goes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I love that scene where he sees the open chest, and it's just a bunch of Infinity Stones that have been taken from the timeline, and they're just useless.
They're useless there, and he's like, yeah, some of the guys use them as paperweights. Dude, I started laughing. I started dying when he said that. I was like, wow. I said, I love how they pretty much took the stones that resulted in one of the biggest events in the MCU, and they're like, yeah, they're a dime a dozen over here.
Right? Yeah. I feel like a lot of the pruning events, or a lot of the jumps off of the sacred timeline happen because people get too greedy around the stones and take them for themselves.
Yeah. And then they just take the stones.
Yeah. But yeah, it kind of breaks Loki. It really kind of shatters his worldview in multiple ways, because not only is his own agency in life challenged, he doesn't have free will. He now realizes that there's something greater than the Infinity Stones, and he's like, is this the greatest power in the universe?
Yeah.
And that's a great line, because it kind of shows where his head's at, everything he's known is false.
Yeah.
And that happens throughout the entire show. He keeps learning more about the universe, and just wait, everything I knew previously is false again.
Yeah, no, that was funny. He's like, oh my gosh, the Infinity Stones are nothing here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty crazy too. I was like, oh my gosh, where is he?
He does end up going back to the time theater to, because he's kind of dejected. He has nowhere to go. He has no idea how to get out of this place. He can't use the Infinity Stones in this reality. So he's going back to the time theater where Mobius was supposed to find him. And he, continues playing through his life.
Yeah.
And, he sees several different things. He sees the events in Ragnarok play out. He sees, he sees the Dark World play out. And then he sees his eventual demise in Infinity War. at the hands of Thanos, and you could see like the fear in his eyes as he sees himself die.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that he's like, man, Thanos killed me when like hours earlier I just had this plan to invade New York for him.
Yeah, it's true, and it messes with them.
Yeah. So yeah, like I think that that's one of the turning points in the show for Loki.
So let's jump into episode 2, so that we don't get caught up too much in the first.
Right, yeah. With the last episode, with the first episode ending with them asking for Loki's help to help stop him, another variant.
Right, and we actually at the end of the first episode get a glimpse of like what Sylvie or this Loki variant is up to.
Right.
She's taking the reset charges from different, like TVA agents and hunters.
Right.
So the second episode kind of begins with, again, another instance where this other Loki, we'll just call her Sylvie because that's her name, is taking reset charges in like a Renaissance fair in Wisconsin. And
1985.
Good, yeah. I appreciate that they're so focused on like when everything takes place on the timeline that they keep it consistent throughout the show. Like even like the little dates on the bottom of the temp pad would like tell you exactly when that happened. So I love stuff like that. This time was a little bit different because she actually stole a hunter, an agent of the TVA, C-20. And that was an interesting twist that we'll see play out later in this episode. But I really liked that it kind of started with this like weird detour into Wisconsin, and then jump back to the TVA where Loki is now like indoctrinated into like or not indoctrinated. He still has his own agency and mindset and everything, and he doesn't really believe all of the TVA's propaganda. But he's willing to help them for his own goals, basically. Yeah.
And they kind of know that, too.
Yeah, and Mobius makes several comments about it, like a backstab from history's most reliable backstabber, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or a double cross, not a backstab, but yeah.
Right.
I really liked the variant jacket that they give him.
Yeah.
To go over his clothes. Dude, I would wear that. That looks like a good fitting jacket, actually. I kind of like that.
It was funny, though, that like they had like that jacket for him. And dude, let me tell you, when he put that on, I was like, dude, this is like very X-Files right now.
Yeah. Yeah. They clearly had their type, their like bevy of inspirations that like kind of run the gamut of like different science fiction stuff.
Yeah.
And I really like that. The guy who wrote the show also wrote for Rick and Morty back in the day as well.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. So it definitely has that feel. Maybe not the same like comedic feel, but yeah, the time travel and stuff kind of feels similar-ish.
Right. Which, I mean, this show does have its good fair share of funny moments.
When they're in Wisconsin and, Loki is visiting with Mobius and the other hunters, trying to track down like what's going on with this Loki. I love how he starts to like plot his way out of the TVA right then and there, and he's like trying to trick them into believing that if they leave the tent, they'll end up the same way as Hunter C-20. Mobius, like after a little bit, he's just like, he's lying. I love that.
It was funny.
What did you think of Owen Wilson as Mobius?
I actually think that this is... I really liked him in this role. I'm used to a specific kind of role for Owen Wilson, and I felt like this was a little different. But it still had a lot of room for Owen Wilson to be Owen Wilson, and it worked.
Yeah, it's true.
And you end up like really liking his character the more the show progresses.
And I kind of wish I mean, I liked his character from the beginning. Although,
of course,
he was a little antagonistic at first. He was really playing both good cop and bad cop with Loki.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I wish that he and Loki had more time together in terms of like the first couple episodes, because they really had a good rapport. And then like Loki leaves at the end of the second episode, but. Yeah, I kind of wish they had a little bit more time together.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
Yeah, they did. I mean, and that rapport that they had really lined up for some good moments.
Absolutely, yeah. So I really liked episode 2 was one of my favorites because they started going into like the past, and they start realizing what's actually happening with how this variant of Loki is hiding,
eluding them, yeah. And it's really cool.
And it makes a lot of sense, if you're actually looking at timeline fractures. You can't really make a fracture of a timeline in an area where nothing can possibly change, like some sort of apocalypse, And so they test it out by going to Pompeii, which
Dude, I loved that moment. Loki was hilarious in that moment.
And can I say, Tom Hiddleston has a fantastic Latin accent, because I have studied a little bit of Latin in high school and stuff, and he nailed it. A lot of times in movies and TV shows where characters suddenly know Latin or whatever, they pronounce things totally wrong. In Latin, the letter V is pronounced with a W. Most actors don't know that, but Tom Hiddleston really did a good job. Maybe it was because of his upbringing in England and stuff, but I don't know.
What was it, dude? Just him as that character. That you can tell that he loves portraying Loki.
He was having such a good time.
Yeah, man. And let's be real. Loki does look like a good time,
It does, yeah. He's simultaneously charming and the worst person in the room.
It's weird, yeah. The worst person in the room, but maybe not the most villainous.
Yeah. Okay. He's the most likely to double cross you.
Exactly. Yeah, he's the most likely to double cross you, but there's a chance that he might feel bad about it down the line. I don't know.
Right.
His character is kind of complicated, especially with the Loki that we have, which is, he is very back and forth because it is the Loki that just, like we said, invaded New York. But yeah, no, in Pompeii, it was really funny where he was like, "Hey, I'm from the future. Look at me. This is y'all are about to die. In 2 seconds, that volcano is about to explode."
Yeah, he's going crazy. He's doing everything to change history, if it's possible, and obviously it's not, because
Mobius was looking. He's like, "Oh wow."
So that was cool. I think they did a really. It's just clever writing, They had this idea, and how do you get around fractions in a timeline if we already have Loki just leaving with the Tesseract, but that instantly was caught by the TVA. What is incapable of being tracked, and it's variations to Apocalypse. It's because everything's destroyed anyway. So I love that. It's just really clever. So they end up finding, based on the gum that was introduced in episode 1, the kablooey gum that they found in France, that it had to take place that Sylvie had to be hiding in this timeline somewhere between like 2048 to 2051. So they started looking at random apocalypses in that time period, and they end up finding the Roxcart disaster of 2050, which is the first time like in the MCU that we've gone past 2024 in terms of like looking at the future, because that was the first time that we ever saw past that point. And it was a really interesting and kind of really scary thing, because, you know, both of us, I lived in Florida for 13 years, and you've lived there your whole life. So you're used to hurricane season. So you know that feeling of like there's a massive storm outside and it could be potentially dangerous. But, you know, in the moment, the people of this town don't realize that they're all about to die.
Yeah, man, that was crazy. And they were all in this like kind of Walmart type place.
Yeah, it's like a futuristic Walmart. But what's weird is that it didn't, like, they had all the same stuff that you would see in like a normal Walmart, which that was kind of like the biggest disappointment of that episode for me. It's just like, why do we have Nintendo Switches in 2050?
Oh no, but that's the Nintendo Switch 7.
Smooth. Yeah.
Are there going to be 7 versions from here to 29 years?
So yeah, I really liked this part of the episode, except for the fact, you know, like I like the exploration of the timeline, like going forward in time.
Yeah.
To this apocalypse, but I was kind of disappointed by the actual execution of like being in the Walmart type place, because it looked like Walmart, you know? They changed the signs and everything, but it's kind of still like a modern day supermarket. They sell the same crap.
We still wear clothes in the future, Dakota.
We still wear clothes. The only difference is our lapel badges are are like digital.
Oh yeah. Yeah. See, look, there's future.
Yeah, no, definitely. They definitely.
Dakota is just upset that the technology seems the same as it does nowadays.
Yeah, you know, same type of vacuums, same type of TVs.
Anyway. But we've been pushed back so much, you know, because of, you know, in light of what's going on.
Yeah, COVID really struck us hard, guys. We really quickly see Sylvie start like using her ability to enchant people, to like take over their minds and control them, and it like passes from person to person. It ends up, you know, B-15, the hunter gets enchanted for a little bit. This big stocky guy gets enchanted. The store worker gets enchanted. So it passes to a bunch of people, and then we eventually see Sylvie at the end of the episode kind of pop up, and, you know, she's just like, I'm on a mission, basically. You coming? Or it wasn't really like, she didn't offer for him to come, but it was kind of like an open invitation. She didn't close the portal until like he decided to go through.
Ran through, yeah, which was interesting. She was setting up. She had set up all those reset charges throughout that building too.
It was a clever thing for her to do, because clearly she had been planning it for years, where she decided she was going to bomb the sacred timeline. And we see in the next scene, after the reset charges go off, that there's a bunch of like variations in the timeline in the TVA's perspective. Like we see, you know, stuff from like the year 1000 and the year 3000, and just different points in the timeline where she decided that she was going to, you know, cause havoc or wreak havoc and start pruning random stuff. But, you know, the ultimate goal therein was to get the TVA agents out of the TVA so that Sylvie would have free reign to, you know, wreak havoc within the TVA as well. Right. But, you know, jumping into episode 3, we see that Loki kind of, like our Loki, messes up her chances of that, because he starts following her, and then they start fighting amongst each other, and, you know, they end up getting sent to another point in the future, 2077, I believe, to Lamentus 1.
Oh yeah, man. That was another really cool episode.
What did you appreciate about that one?
Well, I thought it was really cool because, I mean, it was in another, it was on another planet, and it was another like disaster that they had gone to, So
Yeah.
at that point, it would make it hard for the TVA to track them. No, it was like it was really cool. Like I really enjoyed just the interactions, getting to know Sylvie. This was the episode that everybody fell in love with Sylvie.
Yeah, this is when we really got to know the character.
Right.
And when it comes to like her comic book counterpart, she seems to have been combined from two different characters. So there's the Enchantress, and whose name is actually Sylvie, and then there's female Loki. And she seems to have the show seems to have combined both of those characters to Sylvie Laufey daughter instead of Sylvie Lushton as she was in the comics, or Loki, or female Loki. So
yeah, I was looking a little bit into her character, and yeah, I saw that too. I saw that I saw Enchantress and like female Loki.
So they definitely mix those two characters together to combine her into the Sylvie that we see in the show, and that's fine because both of those are characters that won't necessarily appear in Marvel Studios, or they don't have plans for in Marvel Studios, so they decided to make her one character and give her a little bit more depth, I guess.
And even then, the MCU, the MCU is kind of like its own thing, really.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, the MCU, they take these stories and they put their own spin on them. You know? I mean, remember how massive Civil War was in the comics? How massive in the Infinity Gauntlet series was. I mean, it was a lot bigger than what we actually got. But I feel like what they did was good for like the movie, for like a movie sense, And even then, we got we got a massive battle in Endgame anyway. But I do think that I mean, if anything, if the MCU did decide to bring the Enchantress in, they could make her a different character. They could. It doesn't necessarily have to be like Sylvie. Her name doesn't have to be Sylvie.
Yeah. So when it comes to Lamentis 1, we have the worst apocalypse in the TVA's registry of apocalypses. I don't know how far up and down that goes, but clearly it's worse than Pompeii, it's worse than the Roxxcart disaster, it's worse than Asgard being destroyed. So
right. Yeah, it's an entire planet being destroyed. The moon is coming down on it.
Yeah. So and what's crazy about this is that nobody makes it out alive. And so their entire goal this episode is, well, nobody makes it out alive until we come here. Like this is a different scenario that now we're involved in. So maybe we can get ourselves out. And I know they're not thinking this, but if they get themselves out, most likely they will get other people out in the process. So the entire episode is them getting to the Ark, which is, a literal arc to get off the planet.
Right.
And it's kind of a sprawling adventure.
Yeah, no, it is. And so in the normal timeline, the Ark doesn't even make it.
Right.
The Ark gets destroyed. Dude, it's hilarious. Remember that they go up to that lady's house and Sylvie like kicks in the door and she gets like blown away, and then like Loki tries to like trick her by turning into her husband and like sweet talking her, and she's essentially like, yeah, my husband's never ever said anything like that to me in a long time, and then like shoots him. Yeah,
I love that.
That was hilarious.
And I love I don't know if that's like a cameo appearance of some actress or whatever, because I didn't recognize her, but it seemed like a bigger role than they would give like a normal character, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a fun, just little thing. Like, this is just an interaction on this dying planet. So that was fun. What I did like about, in episode 3 and episode 4 is the actual color grading and special effects that they were able to accomplish to make this destruction look real. Like, a lot of times throughout the episodes, you would have like maybe the train going by, and in the distance you see like parts of the moon or parts of the planet coming down to destroy the moon or whatever, and it's just like havoc wreaking everywhere, and there's just like this slow build up in, like you feel it as it gets closer to the end of this apocalypse, just this sense of like claustrophobia. We gotta get out.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, I agree. There's those moments where it's not like the main focus, but you can see in the background, like huge chunks of the planet or the moon, coming down and just making, kind of destroying the area that it's in. And
as far as planet or moon, if I remember
they were
correctly,
on the moon, right?
They might have been on the moon, and the planet was coming crashing down, or maybe the moon was going towards the planet. I don't really know.
No, I think the planet was falling apart because like it was giant pieces of it coming down.
Right. But the visuals for that were crazy.
Yeah. Because like it would show the planet, and you'll see, it's kind of like coming in, creeping closer, and then these giant chunks are coming down. Man, the train scene was pretty cool. And like super like dystopian, like the fact that it was almost Hunger Games-ish, where like they were trying to get on the train, and there was clearly favoritism being shown to the rich people, the wealthy, who could afford tickets, but the people who like the average people, they were just being buffered in a line that was never ever going to get onto the train. And you feel terrible for these people because, there is inequality that happens in this world like that, and if something like that happens to Earth, you're going to see a lot of the wealthy getting away scot-free, and, the people who are unfortunate enough to not be in that position will, be left aside, which is terrible and, disgusting, but it's the world we live in. You know? So I like how Loki and Sylvie get onto the train. Loki poses as one of those like soldiers.
Yeah.
And,
I like that.
And then I think he was like, oh, and your plan was to like murder them all or something like that. And so they get onto the train. They kind of like sneak by. I think
what's cool is that they
the
had
help
to
of
get
Sylvie, right? I think Sylvie.
She enchants the guard that's like at the front of the thing. So they both needed to use their abilities to get passage. So she needed to enchant the guard, and he needed to like pose as one of them. So together they were able to get onto the train, but Loki, being Loki, the hedonistic god that he is, couldn't help but have a party on the train, and they ended up getting kicked off.
That was pretty funny, and you get to know a little bit more about Sylvie and Loki in this moment,
you do, and there's some like pretty intimate moments in this episode, as it's almost like it's a conversation with Loki to Loki, like it's a conversation with himself, and he's like
it really is wild, like when you think about that.
There's certain like detail given to the idea that this is a character who has lived a different life but is essentially the same person, and they're detailing the problems with each other, but really they're problems within themselves at the same time. So it's like a hypocritical argument that they're having with each other that somehow fits perfectly with the character that we know.
But I think Sylvie knocks out for a little while, and when she wakes up, Loki's partying it up, singing.
He's singing like a Asgardian song, which I actually liked. I thought that was like it's something that we haven't seen Loki do, but you would expect a character who is from Asgard to have like Asgardian hymns that he would, sing on occasion. So, as he's drinking, he starts singing that song, and I liked it a lot.
And he might feel that connection because he did witness the destruction of Asgard when he went through the timeline.
Yes, yeah. So he saw Asgard destroyed as he's looking through it, but he also saw the destruction of Asgard as he was looking through different apocalypses that happened, and we see that close up of his eyes as he's looking at the papers in episode 2. And you could see that it breaks him. But what's funny, like going back to episode 2, when he's describing what happened to Asgard, Mobius is just like, my condolences, or something like that. And then Loki's just like, yes, very sad. And then he moves on. Like, he's totally like over the sadness at that point. It's just so Loki.
It is.
So they get kicked off the train, and that's when they start really having a closer heart-to-heart. They fight a little bit, and then they have a closer heart-to-heart conversation about what it means to be a Loki, and how they're possibly ever going to get off of this planet with a broken tempad. Because
right, yeah. Something that we didn't know was that Loki took the tempad and he hid it, and when they got kicked off the train, literally, kicked off the train while it was moving. Loki broke the tempad in that process. Accidentally. And so, this is it. So it's in this moment where they're like, oh crap, we really need to find a way off this planet.
Mm-hmm. So they end up going straight for the Ark at this point. And I have to give props to the choreography and the set designing department for the city at the end, because it looked like a real place, It looked like a really well put together fictional city, much bigger than anything you'd see in like a Doctor Who type set. But they were running from scene to scene, and they were going through these buildings and fighting different guards on this Lamentis planet or moon. And eventually they get to the front gates of the Ark, and they have a few minutes before it's out of there, and then all of a sudden it just gets destroyed in like I guess an asteroid or a chunk of the planet hits it. Yeah. And it's done.
And it's done, yeah. And
I love the way that the episode ends when they're just like looking at it. And Loki just is looking at it, but Sylvie just kind of like runs off, and it kind of shows the differences in their character. Like she like rage quits, and Loki just can't believe it.
Yeah. Sylvie, she just like walks off. Yeah, I did notice that. I was like, oh, well, she's out of there. Yeah, man. And so this continues on to episode 4.
Yes. So in the time being, another criticism I have for the show is that they never explained how the TVA fixed the bombing of the Sacred Timeline. But I guess ultimately that wasn't the point. Like she wasn't trying to destroy the Sacred Timeline. She was trying to get to the Timekeepers. Yeah. So the entire point of the Sacred Timeline bombing was so that she could infiltrate the TVA while it was empty, So they never really explained that in the show. So we, as viewers, like on a weekly basis, we were like, man, this is going to be crazy in the next episode when they're trying to like stop all these different timelines from happening. But we never saw that, Yeah. All we saw at the end of episode 2 was a bunch of TVA agents jumping into different aspects or different points in the timeline to stop the chaos from ensuing. But yeah, we never really got that. And I think a lot of people didn't realize what the ultimate goal for Sylvie was. And I think that needed to be shown a little bit better. And her goal is to, meet and destroy the Timekeepers. So in episode 4, we're still on Lamentis. They're having a nice heart-to-heart. And we learn more about Sylvie. The episode actually starts with her in Asgard as a young girl. And the TVA comes and they prune her timeline. They take her into custody, and she ends up stealing Judge Renslayer's, or she wasn't the judge at that point, but she ends up stealing her tempad and taking it to, run away on the timeline. And somehow she lasted many, many years without being caught.
Yeah, for real. That's crazy. And then eventually learned about, hiding out in disasters.
I think we can easily say that she is the superior Loki because she was able to do all that as a young child.
I thought that was funny. Especially with like Mobius kind of poking fun at our Loki.
Yeah.
Saying like my money was on her. But yeah, Loki and Sylvie there on Lamentis, yeah, they have like a really nice heart-to-heart. There is like a bit of a budding romance there. Yeah, dude, like a huge, gigantic chunk of the planet like hits, and they've accepted that they're gonna die. They're like getting ready to like, they're like, all right, they're prepared for it, and then then like some portals open up from the TVA. They come in and they're caught.
Yes. Yeah, so I liked that because they were like actively looking for Loki and Sylvie in the TVA. They were like they even increased the sensitivity of the timeline like branches indicator or whatever that is called. And as soon as they touched, it was just like immediate red line.
Yeah.
So they knew like moments before the planet or the moon was destroyed, where they were able to save Loki and Sylvie in that moment, which I really liked. I thought that was really cool. The show gets more and more emotional as it goes on because we're getting very invested in a bunch of these characters. We really care for Mobius. We realize that, or we don't realize at this point that like the TVA is necessarily lying to him, but we are getting certain like. We now care for Sylvie because she's opened up to Loki finally. She's told him about her early life in Asgard and her trials that she's had up to this point. We really care for Loki at this point because even though this is the 2012 Loki, we saw him evolve as he saw his future unfold before him. And, Loki's just a likable character in the first place. So, I mean, it was a fantastic idea to set a show around the character. That's fun.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much like by the end, like where he dies in Infinity War. Yeah, like I mean, he's like one of those characters that like really like redeemed himself.
And that's a character that like is and we'll talk about this later, but I wonder if he did die in Infinity War, But anyway, when it comes to them being, taken prisoner again by the TVA, they each get put into separate time theaters where Sylvie's not talking to anyone at this point, but Mobius is like angry with Loki for double crossing him, and I liked it. It's interesting because Loki's still lying. He's lying to try to like save his own skin, but at the same time, he's trying to ascertain what's happening with Sylvie in the other room. He's trying to figure out what, and he's trying to tell Mobius like what he's discovered about the TVA, which is that they're variants. They're not made by the timekeepers or anything. They're literally pruned off of their timelines respectively. And
right, which is it's pretty crazy. It's like, oh man, this is like I liked when that realization came, and was it Mobius puts Loki into that time loop with him and Sif?
Oh yeah, that was funny. That's a funny cameo for that character because she doesn't look like she's aged a day. First of all, which is good.
No,
for
she
the show.
doesn't.
And she looked happy to like be back in the role, even though she's playing the same scene essentially over and over and over. It was so fun. Because that was funny. By the end of it, he's like, "No, please stop." Yeah.
I mean, because he's getting slapped in the face.
That would hurt,
and, like...
dude. Like, imagine kicked in the groin, and so he's in a lot of pain. Like, and it seems like this is happening every 30 seconds or so. Imagine just like the continuous punishment. I would have pretended to be dead just to see what would happen.
Or hidden somewhere else in that spot.
Right. There had to be, I mean, if it was a time loop that kind of like took place in Asgard, I wonder if he could use his powers to like hide or whatever. Or make like a body double of himself. There's like a bunch of stuff that they could have done with that. And I'm sure they did in like deleted scenes and stuff, but
he could have shadow cloned himself,
Right. So yeah, that Lady Sif stuff was pretty funny. In the other side of things, we have Sylvie being questioned by B-15. And it's not really a questioning because B-15 is like curious about what Sylvie did to her back in episode 2, back in the Roxxcart disaster, when she enchanted her there, because she had a vision of something that she did not remember. So they go back to Roxxcart.
Right, and she could tell that like it wasn't something that was like she wanted to like understand what it was, because I think she kind of felt like it was real, but she wanted to be sure.
Yeah, and you see the apprehension in the character several times throughout the episode before this point. Like she's just like kind of pacing back and forth in front of Sylvie's cell, and she's curious about what Loki tells Mobius, and Mobius tells her like, oh, he says that we're being lied to by the TVA, and that's when she realizes like maybe there's more to this than
right, because they're separated, but they're saying like the same stuff essentially, where Sylvie showing it. B-15 brings her back to that disaster, and said like, hey, what did you do to me? Was this fake? And she was like, no, I can't make up memories, I can only unlock them.
Yeah, and you see the agony on her face as she's like reliving past memories. Like obviously it's probably good memories, because she's saying I look happy, but the fact that this was taken away from her seems
right like it's upsetting. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, her entire life and worldview as a member of the TVA is just shattered because of this revelation.
Right, and like, I mean, you see how dedicated she was earlier in the show, and then like she's just like a completely different person when that happens.
Yeah, so she kind of disappears for a little bit after this B-15. She puts Sylvie back in her time theater cell, and she's kind of gone for a good portion of the episode. Like going back to the interrogations with Mobius, we have an interesting moment where Loki almost kind of professes his love is not the right word, but care, or his appreciation for Sylvie through what he says to Mobius. And Mobius is like, you narcissistic devil, or something like that. And
yeah, like
basically he's like in love with himself.
Yeah, dude, that was when he did that, he was like, oh my gosh, like you literally like fell in love with yourself. How narcissistic, like something along those lines. Dude, that was hilarious.
And it's something that Loki would definitely do, because he loves himself so much. So that was
and he
fun.
Finds somebody that he connects with that just happens to be himself.
Yes. What are the odds of that? Apparently very high in this like TV show, because we end up seeing a lot more Lokis later on. But yeah, I thought that scene was really well done, because we see a change in Loki. He's no longer doing this for himself. He's doing it for someone else, even though it's technically himself in just a different reality.
Right. Yeah.
They end up breaking free, or no, sorry. Judge Renslayer ends up taking both of them to the Timekeepers.
Yes.
What did you think of that scene?
That scene was that scene was pretty crazy, and like as surprising as like the big reveal with the Timekeepers not being like actually real. Mm-hmm. Like as surprising as that was supposed to be, it's like, you know what? I'm not all that surprised because this is Loki, and this show really has been, trying to throw curveballs at you essentially through the whole time.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, that was pretty cool. They essentially get saved by B-15, right? Like she's the one
B-15 shows up, like kind of unlocks their time restraints, and then they start battling all the TVA guards who are guarding the timekeepers. I really like the timekeepers, the way that they visualize them, because they looked real in the moment until Sylvie ends up beheading one, and it turns out to be an animatronic. And
right. Yeah, I mean, it was an android,
I remember people online being like, this is just a ripoff of, whatchamacallit, The Wizard of Oz, like the man behind the curtain sort of thing. And yes, but also no, it's an homage to that. They took that trope and made something, unique with that idea. But it's not necessarily a strict man behind the mirror or man behind the curtain sort of thing. And people...
Right. It's crazy because a lot of people pick and choose at what they dig at, because there's so many different TV shows and movies. They take common tropes and they kind of do something else with it, and then they're praised. But then it's like, when it comes to certain things, I guess that it's supposed to have like high quality, they're like, oh no, man, they took that from that. It's like, dude, like, I mean, a lot of TV shows and movies do that, and some that are really highly regarded.
Yeah, people find things to poke fun at or poke holes in, just because they feel like they want to appear greater than what we're being fed, or smarter than the average viewer, or like more, I guess, up with it with the cultural like appearance and like homages in the show. Sorry, I kind of lost my thought there.
No, you're good. But I mean, if anything like this were to happen, it would happen in a show like this.
Yes, and they pull a bunch of those types of reveals, especially near the end. But let's keep moving forward, because we still have 2 more like pretty heavy episodes to discuss. But we end up with Judge Renslayer pruning Loki just before he kind of professes his love to Sylvie. And at the end of the episode, it's pretty much our only, or no, we have, it's our only real end credit scene. We have Loki pop up in the void, and we see different versions of Lokis. We have a kid Loki, we have I think they call him a boastful Loki, and then we have classic Loki. And then Kid Loki is carrying Alligator Loki, which is just like, this is amazing. What's going to happen in the next episode? And the next episode is rightly crazy.
It really is. Episode 5 is all sorts of crazy.
Walk us through it.
I can't walk you through the whole episode, Dakota. I don't even remember my name sometimes.
It's true.
So yeah, like we see Loki. Does this next episode start off with him in the void, or does it start off with Sylvie?
No, I mean, it does. It starts off with Loki in the void.
Okay.
But then it jumps to Sylvie, taking Judge Renslayer captive to like get her way, to figure out more about the end of time and like what's happening with the timekeepers and stuff.
Right, and where Loki is. But yeah, we see Loki in the void, and it kind of does this really cool, it kind of like pans over like a destroyed city before it gets over to Loki.
Yeah.
And it's really cool, like just the decision that they went with for what the void was going to look like. And I thought that was really cool. So yeah, like we see Loki, he's surrounded by these other versions of Loki, and you see this like really crazy looking cloud in the back. And they're essentially like, they're like, all right, let's go, or we're gonna be that thing's lunch.
Yeah, basically Richard E. Grant is like, we're Lokis, you're in the void, and that is Goliath, and if we don't leave, we're about to be his lunch. And, dude, Richard E. Grant played classic Loki so well. Like, he was perfect for that role.
Right, and he, like, played that character so classically.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's really funny because the whole time throughout this entire episode, I was just like, Richard E. Grant would be a perfect Doctor, like for Doctor Who, and I want that to happen so bad because he's just perfect for that type of goofiness, but also seriousness at the same time.
Well, you know, it was Jodie Whittaker is leaving next year.
Yeah. It's I wish I could have seen Jodie like written under another. How do you say? Written by another showrunner. You know, I just really didn't like. The past couple seasons have been just a little bland. You know.
You know, I mean, bland to the point to where, like, after a while, like, I just stopped. I stopped keeping up with it. You know. It
doesn't. It's not the same Doctor Who that I grew to love. It's still enjoyable, but it's not Doctor Who.
Right, and it has nothing to, you know, and I know that this is like kind of, you know, like digressing, you know, it has nothing to do with the fact that the Doctor's a woman. I just believe that she's just not being written to her full potential, you know?
And I agree with that. I think that Jodie has the makings of a great Doctor, and she has shown in some of her performances that she's fantastic in that role of the Time Lord. And you know, opposite Sacha Dhawan's master, she's great. But I really wish that they would make better episodes, you know, like write better scripts for her. Because I feel like she could be a lot better. I don't know. I don't even know. We're digressing, but
we are digressing. But you know what? The shows are similar, so you know why.
Yeah, not? So maybe Richard E. Grant will be the next Doctor. No, you won't. But I wish. We'll see about that. We'll talk more about Doctor Who in the future for sure.
I like it when they get to the like little hideout, which is in a UFO.
Yeah, and it's just a bunch of random crap that they've collected over the years. Yeah, it's a hideout, but we don't really know what they're hiding out from besides Goliath, the big cloud.
Yeah.
But we learn a lot about like the different Lokis.
We really do. Richard E. Grant, like whenever the alligator Loki would say something, he would say, "Oh, he's saying that."
Yeah, he's the only one who knew what alligator Loki was saying. And it's funny because like you could sometimes see like the smirk on alligator Loki's face. Like there's a scene where they're all laughing at our Loki. And like you and the camera pans to the alligator in the like kiddie pool, and he's just kind of like, but you see like a smile pop up on his face.
You know, like I feel like alligator Loki should be just like completely wild, but I'm just like, dude, with what's been going on this show, why not?
We even got a scene where Loki is like, and I'm sorry to like he's freaking out about being in the void, and he's just like. And I'm sorry to admit that an alligator Loki doesn't even bother me at this point, you know?
Yeah. I love like he essentially said what the rest of us were saying.
Yes, yeah. And I like that about Loki, the show in general, because it's very meta in certain instances where the characters react to the same way that the audience should be reacting.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that was really cool. I like what was it? This is the scene before the scuffle, but there was like a moment where alligator or like so one of the Lokis yelled at the alligator Loki, and they like started fighting.
Oh, so like President Loki. President Loki starts like, "Why is there an alligator in here?" And then the alligator jumps over and just like chops his hand off, and that scream is so funny. I laugh whenever I rewatch that scene, but he's just like, ah!
Dude, and like he came in with like this whole group of like other like random Lokis.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, like, what is up with all these like Lokis? It looks like Mad Max in here.
They definitely.
I was like, what in the fallout is going on right now?
Nice. Yeah, they definitely took some inspiration from a bunch of different stuff, and I think Mad Max was definitely one of them because of like the scraps that they all used in their armor.
Right?
And everything.
Yeah, dude. It was very like post-apocalyptic, bandit, and I think that they were called like bandits or something like that.
Well, it was a marauding gang.
Marauders. Essentially, yeah. There you go. That's what they were called, marauders. That's what they were. And yeah, dude, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yeah. My first thought was like, yeah, okay, like Mad Max, with what they were wearing, and I'm like, this is completely wild. What is going on right now?
So apparently, the actor who played Kid Loki. I forget his name at the moment, but he said in an interview that his Loki had been in the void for the longest. So he's been there for thousands of years, and he just never aged because of the fact that they're in the void.
Right, like there's no like passage of time.
Right, it's just
and he's like the king. He's the king, like they called him, like he's like the king of the void,
which is why he's like he's the only one in the throne, basically.
Yeah,
and that's what the Marauder Loki gang wants, is his throne.
Which the president one was like one that looked just like Tom. It was Tom Hiddleston.
Yes, yeah. So a lot of us were expecting our Loki to be the one to like try to like take control of the void, but it turns out to be an entirely different one,
which is kind of just like him.
Yeah,
which is literally him.
Another thing worth discussing is that classic Loki brings up the point that he tricked Thanos into killing a version of himself that was very believable.
Right. He ended up, he killed Thanos and took the Infinity Gauntlet, and that's why.
No. He didn't kill Thanos.
I thought he said he had killed Thanos.
You might have confused the chat there, but he says that it played out entirely normal, but when Thanos went to kill him, he made a illusion of himself so believable that everyone believed it, basically, and he went to go live out the rest of his life in solitude.
Right. He went to go, like he hid on a planet, and then as soon as he went to go leave that planet is when the TVA showed up.
Basically, yeah. So that kind of gives me some pause, because I wonder if the Loki that we know, Tom Hiddleston's Loki in 2018, back when Thanos attacked the ship, the Asgard ship, if Loki somehow did the same exact thing in that timeline.
Well, if that didn't happen in that timeline, it sure as heck can happen now.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because he could have gotten that idea from classic Loki. Like, you know what? That's a really good idea. It could have happened the first time around, or, now that there's all this crazy, anything is possible literally now because of the show.
Yeah, it's confusing. I don't know that he could have gotten any ideas from this variant's perspective, because essentially now there's two different Lokis going in different directions, and this is the one who is on the sacred timeline, and this is the one who's discovering all these things about the sacred timeline. So I don't know that they would ever like become the same person again, or if the variant Loki will eventually take the place of the modern day Loki in the MCU, if you know what I mean.
Possibly. I mean,
we don't know at this stage. On the other end of the show, we have Sylvie with Ravonna Renslayer, Judge Renslayer, and Miss Minutes, and they're talking about the void and what is really happening there. And we learn that like they can't actually destroy matter; they just send it to the end of time for Eliath to eat, basically. So before she's caught by the TVA, Sylvie sends herself, she self-prunes and gets sent to the end of time.
Something that we didn't mention and we forgot. Mobius gets pruned.
Yes. Yeah, Mobius
gets pruned because he decides to side with Loki in the previous episode.
Yeah, he steals the Tempad from Judge Renslayer and learns what really happened to Hunter C20.
Right.
That basically she was killed or pruned, we don't really know, because of the fact that she had real memories of her time back on Earth.
Right, and they had that interview with her, and they're like, these weren't made up memories. These were real memories. Those were my memories. We're all variants. Essentially what everybody that's gotten their memory back has been saying.
Yeah. So that was kind of sad, obviously.
Right.
But,
right. But yeah, that was
Mobius
the turning point for Mobius. Yeah, Mobius getting pruned. Like when that happened, I was like, crap.
Yeah, we didn't really know what was going to happen at that point. Well, I mean, there's very few points in the show where we're like, I know exactly what's going to happen now. Like the show's like so wacky and stuff, but we didn't know what the end of time was. We didn't know the void was at the end of time. We didn't know there was a void up until the end of episode 4. Right. So there was hope that if Loki could wake up in this time, that Mobius also found a way to live. And he does. So we find in episode 5 that he is basically driving a pizza truck.
Yeah, dude, that was funny. A pizza delivery car. And we don't see this until Sylvie gets into the void, and she has like a really, really close call with Eliath, but she does touch Eliath, kind of like getting like some like memory or like something showing the end of time, showing the Citadel.
The Citadel at the end of time. Yeah, it's a weird little thing where you don't know if it's a memory, like you said, or if it's a vision of the future, or it's some encapsulation of what needs to happen for their journey. But essentially, it's like a vision of the end of their quest.
Right. Yeah, but it's funny because she's running, and then all of a sudden you see this like pizza car driving up. But I knew, like, as soon as I saw that car, I was like, oh, man, that's got to be Mobius. And sure enough, it is him. And yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, they have, like, that like, close call. They kind of get away. And, like, on the other side, Loki comes up with the decision that he's going to kill Eliath.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, it's him... it was a classic Loki, Kid Loki, and Alligator Loki, and they're like heading over to like Eliath, and like Loki says something, and then like the Alligator Loki kind of growls, and our Loki's like he's like, yeah, see, Alligator Loki agrees with me, and classic Loki's like, no, he said we're probably gonna die.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that was funny. But yeah, no, it's hilarious because they get over to Eliath, and Loki kind of really gets like a better look at him because he didn't really get a look at Eliath, and he's like, yeah, let me think about this a little bit. He's like, I don't know how I'm gonna kill this thing. And then
so it basically like takes on that warship like in an instant.
Oh yeah, dude, that was. I like how was it? Yeah, like when something gets purged, it like ends up there, just like kind of pops up. Like you just see random things popping up at some points, and things just like coming down from the sky.
So that's a fun one. There's a lot of like little Easter eggs to myths and legends and just like history scattered about the void. So when the episode first opens in on like the city of destruction and stuff, the first thing that it passes over is the lighthouse of Alexandria from, you know, like the library of Alexandria. And so it passes over that. We see the pyramids with the Sphinx in front, but it has like the Sphinx's proposed original face before it was altered. We have the ship that shows up is the USS Eldridge, and that one is a really interesting story. If you ever look up the Philadelphia Project, I think it was the Philadelphia Project. Let me look that up really quick just to be sure.
Right, like I knew it was like a World War II era battleship.
Oh, the Philadelphia Experiment. It's a legend that for a whole day in Philadelphia, some like mysterious property or like type of weaponry was used on this ship, on this warship, and it disappeared from the harbor for a whole day and then suddenly reappeared later that day. So it was proved false after the fact, but it was in newspapers back in the day. It was like a big deal. And
they got pruned.
They got pruned and they got sent back to the.
They got sent to the void.
They got sent to the void. That's what really happened. So I liked that. That was fun. But yeah, I like the fact that both Loki and Sylvie have their own plan of getting through the void, and one is to kill Eliath, and the other is to enchant Eliath. And obviously, one makes a lot more sense.
Right. It was funny though because Eliath. I mean, Sylvie and Mobius like kind of meet up with them. Like I don't know like how they found them, but they found them, and so they show up, and Loki, you know, there's like a nice moment like, oh, well, you know, you're alive. Sylvie, she comes up with the idea with Mobius that she wants to enchant Eliath because she's like, this is the guard dog protecting the person at the end, you know. Yeah. And Loki was like, you know, oh, I was gonna kill him. It was like, what are you gonna give it a 1,000 paper cuts to death or something like that? Because essentially that's what it would be.
How do you kill a cloud?
You know, for real. She's like, no, I'm gonna enchant it. And I like Mobius, like, she seems pretty sure.
It's so that character is so Owen Wilson. I love it.
Yeah. No, seriously, he really is. Like, I think the reason why Mobius works so well is because they allow Owen Wilson to work in his strengths. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they gave him this character and they're like, hey, you know, we need you to be this. They're like, you know, we need you to be Owen Wilson but sci-fi. Yeah,
for sure.
That's what it was. But
I like that.
That. I like.
But he never said wow.
He never. And that's the only downfall of the show, you know. Mm-hmm. But they give Mobius the tempad, because Sylvie had a tempad when she pruned herself. They hand it to Mobius, and Mobius offers the other Lokis, you know, like, hey, you want to come? And they decide to stay. I like what he says. They're like, oh, so what are you going to do back at the TVA? He's like, oh, I'm going to light it on fire.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much what he wants. And I like that he is the first person to get back from the void, basically. Like Judgment Slayer says, if anyone was going to do it, it was going to be you.
Right. Yeah, I liked that exchange. Like, she didn't seem surprised at all, really.
One of the coolest moments in the show is when classic Loki distracts Eliath.
Oh man!
And
dude.
He just makes a vision of Asgard, like with all his power, and you could tell like he's just super powerful. Just been practicing this for ages.
Seriously. Like, I mean, the thing is that he was so powerful that like both Sylvie and Loki can believe it. They're like, is this like really how powerful we can become?
Yeah, they seem flabbergasted, honestly. But it was cool, and it's awe-inspiring because like he almost did like a Green Lantern sort of thing, where like he like willed something into existence, and he basically willed all of Asgard into existence, which is just nuts.
Which was absolutely insane. And I thought it was cool that when he saw that they were having issues with because Loki was trying to distract Goliath while Sylvie tried to enchant him, but it wasn't working, that he essentially like he sacrificed himself to help them out. Yeah. And that was like a very un-Loki thing
to do.
Yeah. So
that was really cool.
That was really cool. And I liked, while they were doing that, Sylvie was like, help me enchant him. And Loki's like, I don't have that power. And
she's like, you do. You have.
You do. You're Loki. It's in you.
Just because we're all very different doesn't mean we don't have the same properties. Basically, like they've just developed their powers differently.
Right. Like there's a lot similar. Like they all have like a lot of similarities. Personality wise. There are variances that make them, and obviously they all look different. But yeah, I would say power-wise, they should all have essentially the same power. Mm-hmm. I mean, come on. But yeah, no, it was really cool that moment that they enchant Goliath. You see like that green glow.
Yeah.
And then
like the clouds part.
The clouds part, and then you see the citadel. The
real man behind the curtain.
Literally behind the curtain. Like, I mean, that was literally a curtain of cloud.
And honestly, it was well done. It was well done. So
the joke's on you guys. There really was a man behind the curtain.
The curtain at the end of time.
That's what we're gonna call it. The curtain at the end of time.
So episode 6 starts really uniquely. I think episode 6 really blew me away because they stuck the landing way better than Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision did. And they also introduced new aspects to the MCU that are going to really change things for a long time. So we see the Marvel logo pop up, the Marvel Studios logo, but we also hear different phrases from throughout the movies and stuff, and that was sick. Yeah. I love that. We even got some stuff from the shows too, like we have the Vision line, what is love if not, or what is grief if not love persevering, and stuff. Man, we got some like other random little quotes from different people. I think I heard Greta Thunberg say, "How dare they?"
Yeah, they did. You could hear, like, I mean, just everybody. There's Hank Pym in there. Mm-hmm. Like literally just a bunch of movies that they had lines from. But yeah, it was cool that they like it kind of zooms out from the Earth.
And they show different multiverses, or they show different universes. Like they zoom out of one and then they jump into the other, which is the Sacred Timeline one. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool visualization.
I thought it was really cool that when they got to the Citadel, like you could literally see the timeline.
Yes, yeah, it's an interesting.
I was like, oh, there goes Dakota's dream. He wants to be able to see timelines.
I want to sit in that little room and just,
I know you should just like you should just call up your boy and be like, hey, I will take over the timeline for you.
Right? Yeah. It doesn't have to be Sylvie and Loki. It could be me. I'll do it. So that was fun. So before they get into the Citadel, they're kind of just like standing outside, and they're just like, they're both at an impasse of like, what do we do? Like, we're finally here. We finally figured it out. And I thought it was pretty funny that like Sylvie's asking Loki if he's gonna stop her from like kicking the door down. And he's like, no, not really. And I mean, this is what we're gonna do, right? And then later on in the discussion, Sylvie starts saying, like she starts yelling at Loki, don't stop me from doing this, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of funny because she clearly wanted to yell at him anyway, and she was just gearing up. She was like setting him up so that she could yell at him. I thought that was pretty funny.
I think she was also like a little scared and wanted him to
stop
wanted
her,
him to try to stop her.
Yeah,
you know, like kind of wanted that. You know, like I mean, because the place does look a bit like spooky. I mean, let's be real. And I mean, they're in a place at the end of time. It's a spooky mansion looking place that they call the Citadel at the end of time. And so yeah, they pop in, and lo and behold, your girl shows up, Miss Minutes.
Hey y'all.
I love how she's got like that like southern thing going on.
You know that's Tara Strong, right?
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, she's
fit.
literally in everything.
Yeah, no, she's a perfect fit for that role. So anyway, Miss Minutes gets a little jump scare where it's almost like the final test before they reach the final boss, basically. Like, you could turn back now and you'll get whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can kill Thanos and take the Infinity Gauntlet all for yourself, and you can get a nice life with all your memories. And she's basically like giving them this ultimatum, like, if you just leave now, you can have whatever you want, and he who remains will give it all to you. And they're just like, nah.
Yeah, man. That was funny. But yeah, essentially, like, you know, they deny it, and they're like, oh, okay. And,
but what's interesting about that is that's what they wanted before all of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, before they went on this journey, that's what they ultimately wanted. Like, he wanted to eventually take the stones from Thanos and all that. So that's really interesting. And Sylvie, she wanted a normal life. You know, she wanted to be able to live out her life on the timeline as she deemed fit. That was, both of those options were kind of like taken away from them. And
they had purged her from her timeline, or pruned her from the timeline, and they didn't even give her like a reason why, like what her charge was.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma where she was just a forgotten entity, basically. And,
because like all the other Lokis, they knew what they did wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know,
so they end up meeting, you know, beyond Miss Minutes. They meet He Who Remains, who's played by Jonathan Majors. And I loved this actor, and I cannot wait to see him again in future Marvel projects, because this is just one.
And know we're gonna see him again, for sure.
Oh yeah. He originally was cast in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania to play Kang the Conqueror, who is exactly who this character is, basically. Like, he is a variant of Kang the Conqueror, but a far less evil one.
Right. And I mean, he kind of like explains that. I like his name. It's very like Lord Voldemort, like, you know, he will not be named.
Yeah,
you know who.
He who shall not be named, or whatever. Yeah.
You know who.
You know who. You know Pooh.
So yeah, I mean, essentially at the end of time, there's Lord Voldemort.
And I kind of like that they didn't actually give the name Kang. You know, like, just let that revelation like draw out a little bit for like the more normal fans. But obviously, like, us who like dig into this stuff, we know who the character is and like the threat that he poses for Marvel.
And I loved, like, when you meet him, he's not like some just like imposing being. He's just like really happy to see them.
And I love how they didn't like try to like make his face all blue like in the comics or anything like that. They just made him a normal dude who's just controlling the timeline. And he was super... Dude, he was like Willy Wonka almost, you know?
Essentially, yeah. It was funny. Like, he was like, "Hey guys," you know, he pours him a drink, like, you know, hey, you know, you want, you know, here you go.
And dude, the actor was fantastic. He stole like that entire episode away from Loki. Like, it was just he had such gravitas on the screen that I couldn't believe it.
I know. I love that like TemPad thing that he had. That like he like threw that little like goo stuff onto the desk.
That was cool.
But yeah, like he had alluded He's like he was the one that kind of discovered that there was other like, you know, universes, and then other versions of him came to the same realization, and they all kind of met up.
Right.
And that, some would call them conquerors, and like he like really emphasized that.
Yes. You could tell he was just eating up that script. Like, he loved that character, and he was having a lot of fun while filming it.
I know, like he was like excited while he was filming that, and it really showed, because like he was like really like happy. he was
jumping on the table, stomping about.
He really was, and I loved like the moments where like they would try to kill him, and he just like dodge it. He's like, I know what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was really cool.
He didn't.
Oh yeah, dude, that was really crazy. Like he kind of like, when he was sitting there, he's like, man, we're past the threshold. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen.
He knew that this point was coming, and that there was going to be a fork in the timeline that he couldn't realize. Like, he didn't know what was going to happen after that point.
And that was really cool. And the funny thing is that he still wasn't afraid.
I think
he's like, I could very well be killed.
So I have a theory that, this is the guy that's been manipulating the MCU from the start to get to the point in an Endgame where we have a whole universe of heroes that are able to take on a character like Thanos.
Dang it, Dakota. So you're telling me that there's an overarching story on the overarching story?
I think there is. So I think that he allowed the universe to develop in a way that would be able to eventually take on his other variants, like Kang the Conqueror. Like he allowed the MCU to develop in a way where there was just like an exponential amount of heroes that kept coming up, so that they would eventually be able to take on what came after him. Basically, like, he knew that his time was limited, and the potential for Kang the Conqueror to come into the MCU was a very real threat. So he wanted to groom the MCU, like kind of like a bonsai tree. You like groom it to a certain shape. He groomed it in a way that the heroes would be able to eventually defeat what was coming next.
So it was him all along, and not Kevin Feige?
It was him, yeah. It was Kevin Feige is just a pawn.
But yeah, no, that was like crazy. But yeah, no, and he gave them the option, like, you guys can be the one to take over the timeline, or you can kill me and deal with a crazy bunch of evil versions of me.
Mm-hmm.
And
they both see it differently. Like, Loki sees it much differently than Sylvie. Sylvie thinks he's lying.
Yeah, and it's crazy because as much as Loki doesn't trust, like, he sees that this guy's telling the truth. And so there, and there's stuff happening at the TVA also while this moment is happening, with Mobius, kind of taking things down, and B-15 kind of gets a bunch of the hunters to follow her to what was Judge Renslayer's previous life, which was a principal.
Yeah, it's
of a school
in Ohio. Yeah,
and that was wild. Yeah, I knew when she brought them to that place, I was like, I have a feeling that we're gonna see Judge Renslayer like before she, was like the head of TVA. Yeah. And sure enough, like, and that was crazy. So like that blew their minds of like, okay, so what's happening right now? Mm-hmm. So yeah, TVA is essentially like falling apart. Like, yeah, Loki and Sylvie, they kind of have like a scuffle. They have like that moment where they kiss and they make up, but then like Sylvie like pushes him through a portal to the
she
TVA.
pushes him into the TVA. Yeah,
right. And he's kind of like, oh crap, he knows what's gonna happen. Sylvie's like whole like existence since a kid was essentially to survive, and to kill whoever did this to her, whoever interrupted her life. Yes. And that's what she does. And when she does that, the timeline just goes absolutely bananas. It looks like a nervous system essentially.
Yeah, it does.
It branches
it just
off.
starts branching, and the branches have branches. And
Dude, it's insane, and like you see it on the timeline, like in the back, like all the branches, and that it starts like going crazy. But yeah, it's insane. The branches have branches, and Loki's like, oh my god, I can't, like, oh my god, she did it. Like he, and then just the way that the season ends is just so crazy, man.
Yeah, and
you
she
want to
kills
finish
Kang.
it off?
Yeah, so she kills Kang, and like you said, the branches start going crazy. The multiverse basically opens back up, and back in the TVA, we have Loki try to like talk reason into Mobius and B-15.
Right.
And he's like telling them, we did it. We ended up finding the person behind it all, but Sylvie killed He Who Remains, and blah blah blah. And like Mobius doesn't know who Loki is. B-15 doesn't know who Loki is. They think he's just one of like some agents or whatever.
Right.
And Loki looks up and he realizes like something's changed. And
right.
Did you ever see the 2000s Planet of the Apes movie?
Oh
with,
yeah,
Matt
like
Damon, I think it was.
like a while ago. Yeah.
At the end of the movie, he comes back to Earth and he sees that the Lincoln Memorial was changed to a monkey's face, or like an ape face. So it's basically like a little play on that, like a
that the statue changes to
He Remains. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was crazy.
That was crazy. And then the end scene where Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, come out to the Spider-Verse.
Insane. Yeah, that was insane. And then Doc Ock like destroys the screen in like some like meta way, and it's just like Loki will be back in season 2.
This show definitely is setting up Multiverse of Madness.
Absolutely.
I mean that's the clear one. And No Way Home
is heavily rumored to also have Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and a bunch of the villains that have showed up in the previous films as well.
Right. So I mean, really, the show does set up a Spider-Verse thing, movie to happen essentially. In No Way Home, like when you think about that name, it almost has like that thing where he could be caught in like a Spider-Verse event. I don't know, that maybe I'm digging too much. I know a lot of people want this to happen. It very well may happen, or it might not.
At this point,
we'll
if
see.
it doesn't happen, there's going to be a lot of people who are disappointed.
If it doesn't happen, there's going to be a riot.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I'm pretty excited to see. This is the pretty much the event. This TV show was the event to bring us into like the new age of the MCU. Really.
So, the Disney Plus timeline, like to view the shows and the movies in chronological order on Disney Plus, they list Loki directly after Endgame and before WandaVision. So I think that that's really interesting and almost telling, because of the 3 shows or the 3 things that take place after Loki, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Spider-Man Far From Home, there's 2 that at least I think already we have variants showing up. So in Far From Home, we had J. Jonah Jameson doing that like web show Daily Bugle thing, the podcast that we see at the end of the movie. And I think he might be a variant. And they already had planned this back then. And I think that
that's good. Yeah,
Quicksilver in WandaVision might have also been a variant.
Yeah. That's a good pickup. Yeah, because he was in the Fox X-Men.
The Fox X-Men, and the other one was in the Sony Spider-Man, the original Raimi trilogy. So
yeah,
we'll see, man.
I think it, that actually really is a cool way of thinking about that. Yeah, because they take place after Loki, and we've already seen a couple different versions of, specific characters from past movies. Which, I mean, it would really just be, awesome because, dude, oh my gosh, man. And I already can't wait for Into the Spider-Verse too. That first one was amazing.
Yeah.
Man.
So that Into the Spider-Verse is coming too. But with that, I think we should probably close out our show because we're coming up on 2.5 hours.
No, man, there's way more. There's way too much to talk about Loki.
Way too much to break down. I know. Do we have any idea of what we're doing next week?
Not a clue.
All right. Well, we'll figure it out.
We usually do.
So thank you guys so much for listening to us here at Project Geekology for our 34th episode. This week we talked about Loki, obviously, but next week Anthony and I will be jumping into something. So be sure not to miss out on our discussion then. Be sure to find all links to our show and socials in the show notes so you can keep up to date on all Project Geekology news and updates. If you enjoyed today's show, share it on social media, review it on your preferred podcast application, or talk to us directly online. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. Have a good one and eat fresh.